Hi, I'm Carrie, and welcome to episode 12. I am a knitter and knitwear designer based out of Columbus, Ohio, and this is my studio where I get to work on all of my knitting projects. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today to chat about knitting. The first day of spring is this week, and I'm still riding that spring motivational wave that happens this time of year every year. So I've been reorganizing my studio, and by reorganizing I mean finally cleaning it, since it's been a disaster for the past year since my child's favorite activity was pulling yarn out of bins, and things just got very chaotic. So I'm finally getting things a little bit in order. I'm about ready to tackle a giant stash reorganization project, again tied to said child and getting things all disastrous, but also just making my stash work a little bit better for me so I can know what I have more easily and access everything more easily. So that's a story for another time. We're here to talk about knitting today. So I have 2 finished objects that I'm excited to share, 2 works in progress, and a few mending projects that I've been working on, as well as some acquisitions. Though I'm going to save yarn acquisitions for my spring-summer knitting plans video in a couple of weeks, but I have other exciting acquisitions that are not yarn, so I will share those today. I will start off with what I'm wearing. I'm wearing 2 hand knit objects, well technically 3, but one's a pair of socks. So we'll start with the underlayer first. The underlayer here is my Parsed Tank. This is a new design that will be coming out sometime later this year, late spring, early summer. I'd kind of set it aside last year when it was getting cold and clearly, not seasonally appropriate to release. So that will be coming out soon. It's just a nice tank top. I have the V-neck in front. There are a bunch of different neckline options. There's a V-neck, a scoop neck, and a square neck. And because of all of those options, I'm really glad that I set the pattern aside, because when I came back to the pattern with fresh eyes this past week, I kind of realized you had to flip back and forth as you were working the pattern because of the different options that the pattern includes. And that wasn't the most user-friendly experience, because you had to bounce between pages and only certain sections apply to you if, depending on the neckline that you're making. So to make things a lot more clear, I divided out the instructions for each of the necklines with a set of armhole instructions on the same page, so you don't have to bounce back and forth between the neckline and the armhole. Everything's on the same page. The armhole and neckline instructions are written separately to give you the opportunity to make modifications really easily should you want to adjust the neckline depth or anything like that. And there's a whole neckline modification page that you can reference on how to approach those adjustments depending on which neckline you're making too. So that pattern is not quite ready for preview knitting yet, but I will be putting it in preview knitting soon. So if you're interested in preview knitting a spring summer tank top design, be sure to sign up for my preview knitting list below. That'll just send you an email when I have the application go live for that. And if preview knitting isn't your thing, but you want to be notified about the design, there's also my newsletter list linked below as well. The other thing that I'm wearing is also my first finished object of the day. So if you've been following along in the podcast, you will absolutely recognize this cardigan. This is Rockmill Cardigan. It is also a new design. This is going to be something coming out in the fall. I'm also still working through the pattern on this one, and given the fact that it is essentially a DK, maybe light worsted weight cardigan, and mine is held with mohair. Again, we're heading into spring summer, so not super seasonally appropriate for this time of year, but I'll have plenty of time to work through the pattern, do a preview knit, all of that jazz. All of that to say, I am so pleased with this finished object here. So this is worked in Rosa Pomar Vovo, which is a sport weight yarn, and I'm holding it together with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. And I'm using 2 different colors. So the Vovo is kind of a mid-tone green, and the Knitting for Olive is a darker green. So you just kind of end up with a nice marled glowy effect. So I guess I can just kind of show you here. It's really, really lovely with that dark halo around the yarn. It helps provide some nice stitch definition there. So the last time you saw this, I was halfway through the button band. So I knit the other half of the button band and also did an Italian bind off along the neckline edge. And wow, that took a while. Definitely worth it, because Italian bind off creates such a nice clean finish, but over the length of, you have the total body length times 2 because it goes down both sides. Definitely a project, but totally worthwhile to have that beautiful finish edge in the end. And I also attached the buttons, and I'll give a close-up of those buttons. They're really, really lovely square ceramic buttons. These are from Briar Rose. And I don't know if she sells buttons online in her shop, but she is a yarn dyer based out of Michigan. She often has buttons at her shows. I know she has been slowing down lately due to some health concerns, but she makes really, really beautiful things. And if you ever have a chance to check her out, you absolutely should. So since I finished up knitting this, I have been wearing it a ton. Even though it is held with mohair and the weather is warming up, it's still a really, really great layering piece, especially this time of year when, you know, the weather's kind of swinging back and forth between hot and cold, and in kind of those in-between times, this serves really well as like a jacket kind of piece where I don't have to wear an actual jacket. I can just wear this sweater. And then also inside, especially if I'm like hanging out in the basement or something where it's quite a few degrees chillier in the basement, it's just a really nice cozy piece for some extra warmth on those days that it's still chilly or I'm in a chillier location. I'll just do a quick little awkward stand up here so you can kind of see the finished garment. It is, as I said, really lovely. It has a super easy fit. I have to take my final measurements to see exactly how much ease I have, but it's definitely quite a bit of positive ease, a lot more oversized than what I typically go for. I usually like things more fitted, like this is, you know, a fitted top, but I definitely appreciate kind of the easier, more layering friendly fit. I know I'm going to appreciate it, especially next fall and winter, to layer other sweaters underneath during the coldest times of the year. But this time of year, as I said, it's a nice jacket. It will probably go out of my wardrobe rotation though as we get into those even warmer months, because the mohair is just going to make it like too hot to wear because it gets quite hot here. My second finished object is Quotidian Tee. And this is my long languishing project that I started in 2022. And it is finally done. So this is a basic long sleeve tee pattern. So the pattern again has a bunch of options. There are a bunch of body fit options as well as sleeve length and sleeve fit options. So this is the long sleeve version of the pattern. I chose the fitted body fit and the mid hip length and the fitted sleeve. So the long sleeve version also has like a relaxed sleeve that you could choose, and there's also short sleeves. Lots of options. I am so glad to finally have this finished after literal years on the needles. I did run into some issues with my sleeve caps as I was making them. I posted a video on that where essentially my flat knitting gauge this year while I was knitting it was significantly looser than the rest of my gauge. I didn't have this issue last year while I was knitting like the upper body flat, but I did have the issue this year, and that resulted in sleeve caps that were just way too big for the armhole area and causing a bunch of excess fabric both in width and in height. Did not measure my row gauge, but I guarantee it was looser than what it should have been as well. But after fixing that gauge problem and being on gauge for knitting my sleeve caps, it now fits really beautifully. And I'm so glad to have this like classic wardrobe staple style piece in my wardrobe now. I got to wear this a couple of times before the weather started to warm up, but it is going to get essentially packed away for the next several months because, again, with the mohair, I guess I didn't even go into the yarn details on this yet. It has mohair. With that mohair, it is too hot to wear during the warmer like spring, summer months, but definitely something super cozy and will be very welcome to wear during those colder months of the fall and winter. So I guess I should share the yarn details for this one. So I was diving into deep stash for this yarn, at least for part of the yarn. I was using a lace weight that I purchased in 2011 when I was living in Boulder, Colorado for an internship in college. And I basically decided that A, I probably wasn't gonna knit a sweater in just lace weight, and B, the color wasn't exactly what I would be interested in wearing alone. So like holding the lace weight with itself, I probably wouldn't get as much wear out of it. So I decided to purchase some black mohair. This is Knit Picks Aloft mohair, and hold it together to create a charcoal gray essentially. And again, you kind of have that really lovely marled effect with that lighter base color and the darker mohair. It's really super lovely. It has a lot of depth of color. And again, just gonna be like, it's essentially a black, well, a charcoal V-neck. So it's gonna be something that's an absolute wardrobe stable piece. The finished fabric is absolutely divine. It is so soft, so lofty, and also warm. And as I said, because it's so warm, that also means that I am probably not gonna wear this until, I don't know, October maybe, if it gets cold in October this year, because last year it did not really get cold in October, so it might not even be until November. But as I said, I did get a couple of wears in, and it was really lovely for the few times that I did wear it so far. On to my works in progress. The first thing that I have to share is my Harlo sweater by Kadri. So again, this is another like deep stash dive project where I am using some very, very old stash yarn. So this is one of the yarns that I'm using. It is a variegated stroll yarn from Knit Picks, and when I bought it, I was a little bit like disappointed by the amount of variegation in it. So, but I had still also just held on to the yarn for all of these years, all 12 of them. I think I bought this in 2013 or so. It's been a while. That being said, after having the success with the Quotidian Tee where I layered mohair with a yarn that I was like, I'm not sure if I'm really gonna like this as it is, I took a similar approach with this and held it together with two other yarns, a solid darker stroll color as well as black Knit Picks Aloft mohair. And it just really helps to, you know, pull back on the amount of high and low, and you definitely do still have quite a lot of variegation, and you know, it's not necessarily something that I would immediately gravitate towards if shopping now, especially shopping in person. That being said, I do think this is going to be something that I will actually wear, which is the goal. You do see a little bit of difference in the variegation between the larger width slash circumference of the body here and the sleeves. I feel like there's kind of a little bit of striping that you can sort of see, but at the same time, the intention for this garment is kind of to be like an at-home sweatshirt style piece. So I think I'm gonna have no issue with that, just kind of wearing it around or even like out for errands or anything like that. I don't think it will really bother me enough to do anything about it. Like, I could alternate skeins, but like, I already have, technically I have 5 yarns attached to this right now because when I finished the first skein of the variegated in the body, I just kind of left where I was with the mohair and the solid color and then started working on the sleeves. Just from an ease of knitting perspective, I always feel like by the time I'm knitting the sleeves, if I've already completed the whole body, I feel overwhelmed by the amount of fabric that there is. So I usually tackle the sleeves first. So anyway, all of that just said, there are 5 balls of yarn currently attached to this. So I'm not really about to add in a 6th one just to get slightly less stripey effect and something that's already, you know, variegated and all of that. And again, it's not too much of a difference to make me really want to do anything about it. So it is what it is there. What I am wondering though is what I should do for the cuffs and the collar. So this pattern has a deep 2x2 rib collar and cuffs, and I am debating between doing contrast, so using just the solid that I had purchased along with mohair, well, I guess 2 strands of the solid plus mohair for the cuffs, so having like a deep navy essentially as the collar and cuffs, or keeping it in the same fabric color palette that we already have here and just continuing with the colors that I have here to work the collar and cuffs. So let me know in the comments what you would do. Would you do contrast cuffs and collar, or would you keep it all the same? I do think the bottom hem I will probably keep the same. So this is really just about like the neck cuff and the sleeve cuffs, or I could do like just the neck or just the sleeves. Anyway, I'm kind of torn as to what kind of aesthetic. Obviously with a contrast color, it becomes a little bit more sporty. Again, the goal for this is to kind of have a sweatshirt style piece. So sporty is like kind of the vibe for sweatshirt sort of thing. But I'm just still very undecided, so I would love to know what you think. So I wanted to dive into the construction of this piece a little bit and my thoughts on the pattern overall, since often as a designer, I'm knitting my own things and I don't always knit pieces from other designers, especially adult sweater patterns from other designers. So I thought I would share my thoughts and feelings about knitting another designer's sweater. So this is a pretty traditional top-down drop shoulder construction where you start out with short rows to shape the back and then you pick up stitches along the back to work the front. You don't work short rows on the front here, so you kind of end up with a bit of a difference in height of how much of the front is wrapping to the back because of that shoulder slope. And then for the front, you work some shaping as you're working down for the neck shaping here, and then you join to work in the round, pick up stitches for the sleeves, work in the round, doing some decreases to shape the sleeves. So very straightforward traditional construction there. What is really interesting about this piece is the shoulder detail. So I'll come in close to show that here, and it's dark so you can't see it super well here, but there's kind of like a sideways knit stitch detail that travels along the shoulder. And the way that this is executed in the pattern is you knit a long strip of I-cord and then you pick up for the back, and then you later pick up on the other side of the I-cord for the front. I was like not about to knit a giant strip of I-cord and then pick up stitches along the edge. So I just ended up doing an I-cord cast on instead. That's just my personal preference because I was like, I don't want to be super precise about, you know, making sure I'm putting my needle in the right place to pick up along the I-cord. If I was knitting with not 3 strands in a color not this dark, I probably would have stuck with the designer's construction because there is a bit of visual difference between like just an I-cord and an I-cord cast on. But because I was working with 3 strands and because I was working with a really dark color, I was like, I'm not even gonna try. It would have been a challenge to be successful to make sure that I was doing things exactly correctly and also knitting the exact correct number of I-cord rows. I just like wasn't in the brain space to be like, yes, I have knit the exact correct number of I-cord rows. So as I said, I just did an I-cord cast on instead. So I didn't have to count how many I-cord rows I did. I didn't have to pick up on the I-cord either, or at least on the, you know, on the back. Did have to pick up on the front. But at that point, like you're not trying to pick up on like a little noodle essentially. So like picking up for the front is no big deal regardless of which cast on you choose, doing like an I-cord or an I-cord cast on. So just for my sanity, change that. Really, again, just a minor detail there. And then otherwise for just like the overall pattern instructions and clarity and all of that, it's been honestly pretty solid. This definitely is a pattern that's geared more towards beginners, and I totally understand and respect that. I think it's just like, you know, a classic, beautiful piece, and it's clearly written. She kind of like helps you understand what you're supposed to be doing at each step along the way and be like, you're done with this, now you're doing this. So I did appreciate that, especially knowing that it is kind of a bit more of a beginner's perspective. That being said, I was a little bit disappointed in the lack of a schematic or significant measurements. There are 3 measurements included in the pattern for like target garment measurements. There's chest circumference, bicep circumference, and total body length, including ribbing. And to be fair, these are like the most important measurements that you would need, especially like the chest and the bicep, to like know approximately how big things are. But you're missing critical things like neck depth, underarm length. Technically, I think you can understand underarm length based on the pattern instructions and then adding on the ribbing length, but it's not just like listed in a place where you can easily reference. Shoulder slope isn't there. I mean, the armhole depth is half the bicep circumference, so like you can calculate that really easily, but it's just like very minimal in terms of measurements. So if you do want to go in and make adjustments, or you kind of know the fit that you like and the approximate measurements that achieve the fit that you like, you have to like do some math yourself or do some digging, and it's just kind of nice if you don't have to do that when you're knitting someone else's pattern. And then also, again, just like the schematic visual of like, this is what things are supposed to look like when you've knit the sweater. It would be nice to have that. I feel like even for a beginner pattern where, you know, as a beginner, you may not necessarily know why a schematic is there or why it's important, I feel like having it there can at least provide that visual reference of, this is what things are supposed to look like. Here's what here's what the measurements are supposed to be. Because at the end of the pattern, it does say like blocked measurements, but you only have, again, like the chest, the bicep circumference, and that like total body length. So there's like not as much information there to be like that easy check of the sleeves are blocking to the right length, or the sleeve opening is the right length, or maybe you want a more tapered sleeve. Knowing what the sleeve opening is supposed to be, then you can kind of compare what you want it to be and be able to make that adjustment easily yourself. So overall opinions of it, I think it's a solid pattern. I think it's well written. It's producing a result that like, I think I'm gonna like it. I think I'm gonna be really pleased with this finished object. I also think that, you know, there could be a little bit more information there, at least in terms of those measurements and schematic. I'm excited to keep working on this, and I know that we're like heading into spring, heading into warmer weather, and this was a worsted weight with mohair sweater, so like I'm definitely not going to be able to wear this right away when I finish it. It's gonna be like winter by the time that this is the weather appropriate option for me. But I still think I'm going to keep working on it because it's just a nice mindless stockinette project at this point. Like I knit a few decreases for the sleeves as I'm working them, but overall like nothing crazy going on here. So it is really nice to just kind of have something that's there on the needles, really easy to work on, especially if I've had like a long day at work, I don't want to use my brain, that sort of thing. This is the perfect project for that. My next work in progress is a pair of socks. These are the Cider House socks by Summer Lee, and they feature a cute little stripy cuff and then cables and ribbing for the body of the sock. And I am halfway through the gusset decreases. So overall, this is a very classic cuff down sock construction. You start off with the striping pattern, then go into the stitch pattern here, heel flap, gusset, all of the good stuff that you normally do for a sock. I have not read ahead for the instructions for the toes yet, but we'll see when I get there. But overall, I've been having a really nice time working this project up. It was really fun working these stripes. I actually ended up changing my color palette from what I had shown last time, which had a slightly darker like yellow gold color. So this is what I'm using here. It's Knotty Pine Bighorn sock. This is the dark green for the contrast up here, and then the lighter yellow color. And it just creates like a nice, you know, stripe. And then I have a lighter green color here for the body of the sock. These two are minis from the 2022 Advent, and the green is left over from a pair of mitts that I knit a couple of years ago. And I think it's a really nice combo. We'll see how the yarn holds up in the wash because I am not nice to my socks in the wash. We know this, we accept this, that some socks will kind of deteriorate a little bit faster depending on the yarn base and that sort of thing. It is my fault because I'm not following care instructions to, you know, lay flat to dry, but I'm also just not going to do that. So everything gets thrown in the washing machine and in the dryer, and I kind of just locate the sock bases that work really well with those instructions, and then I don't continue to work socks with things that don't work well with those instructions. So again, with this, it was really fun working from another designer's pattern. It's kind of nice to see how other people write patterns or like approach pattern layout, and also it's just kind of fun like following instructions instead of having to think of what I have to do next and doing all of the math behind it. It's nice to sometimes just have someone else tell me what I should be doing for my knitting project. So that's been fun for this one. I will say I do have a slight qualm with the charting method used here. So Summer does specifically say that she uses color symbols instead of traditional cable chart symbols because that's like what works better for her brain essentially. But I feel like the purpose of a chart is to be a visual representation of what the fabric is supposed to look like. So for like a color work chart, of course you're supposed to use color because you need to represent like what the colors are gonna look like on your fabric. But for like a cable chart, you kind of need to use the symbols to show like which direction is the cable supposed to twist and that sort of thing. And I know that not everyone's brain works like this and not everyone sees the cable symbols as useful. Like some people are like, the cable symbols are like a complete mush. And I get it, everyone's brains work differently, which is why it's so great to have different kinds of instructions, like both written instructions and charted instructions. But in this case, I feel like a really good happy medium, best of both worlds kind of thing would have been to color code the traditional cable chart symbol, because then for chart users like myself who really appreciate being able to kind of see what's going on in the fabric, you can still see that. And then for people who those symbols are just kind of like, I don't know what this means, I have to like go back and read the chart key anyway, having the color there is the key of like, oh, that's the one that I have to do, you know, across this direction for. It's still color coded. So you'd be able to kind of get both things there. That being said, it's a really simple cable chart. So it's just like one, there's like, you know, you have your pattern repeat and only one of the rows is cabled. So once I had done the one cable row once, I could just look at my fabric to know what way I'm supposed to twist on subsequent rows. So like for this chart in particular, not a problem. I didn't even have to rechart it because all I had to do was look at my own work once I had done one round of cable crossing, and I only had to like go look at the chart key and read the chart key to see what color meant what type of cable cross. I only had to do that once. That being said, if it was a more complex cable, I would have been driven absolutely mad. If it was a bunch of different colors for different kinds of cables, I just like wouldn't have been able to make any sense of the pattern whatsoever and would have to like go back in and rechart the entire thing in a traditional way. This is the only Summerly cable pattern that I have purchased, so I don't know if this is a consistent theme among her other cable patterns. I think there are a couple in there. I know she mostly does color work, so this is a complete non-issue, but I will say it would make me like not necessarily second guess buying another one of her cable patterns, but I would just kind of go in knowing I may have to rechart this to actually follow, you know, a traditional charting method so I could see what I'm supposed to be doing versus being like, what do these colors mean? It makes no sense because the colors have no grounding outside of like the fact that they're clearly written in the chart key what they're supposed to be. So like it's there. But there's no like true visual representation of what is going on in the fabric, which is like why I like charts. So I would just like have to go in knowing that I may have to go in and do a little bit of extra work myself. I feel like this is easily solved where you could just have both a color-coded cable symbol, but that's just me. That's my brain and all of that. So I can take care of my brain and the things that I need for it. Otherwise, the pattern has been an absolute delight to knit. It has a really, really cute result. Like I am so pleased with this. It's really cute. I am so excited to finish these, to wear these. And yeah, who doesn't need a cute pair of cabled socks in their hand knit sock drawer? Today for Stash Dive and Revive, I wanted to share some mending that I have been working on lately. So as it's edging closer into spring, I kind of like to take this time of year to focus on getting all of my sweater care done. So that includes mending holes that have popped up for whatever reason, often elbows due to how I just wear through my sweaters, and other like you know, cat claw snags, that sort of thing that happens, as well as getting things washed and put away for the winter time. So in the past couple of weeks, I focused on some fixes that I needed to tackle. So I will go ahead and share what I worked on here. First up is a fix that I did on my Bryce Pillar cardigan. So I knit elbow patches on both sleeves. I often run through the elbows on my cardigans. I'm just wearing them perpetually. I have a couple that I wear all the time. I work a desk job. I lean on my elbows a lot, and that means I wear the elbow area thin, and it wears significantly faster than anywhere else on the garment. So I had noticed that the elbows were wearing thin, and on one side I actually had gotten a small hole from where the yarn had broken. So I was like, okay, it's time to do my elbow patch fix. So what I did, since these sleeves are picked up around the armhole and knit towards the cuff, so I just picked up stitches along what would essentially be the top of the patch, because the knitting direction is this way and you wear it this way. So I picked up stitches and then just knit a little patch and knitting together, or slip-slip knitting with the edge stitch along the way, working in the seed stitch pattern, and then just grafting it at the top. And then I also did a little bit of needle felting to kind of secure the two layers of fabric that were still there together. So it does look a little bit fuzzy in this area, and you'll also notice that the color is darker there. That's just from washing the cardigan and wearing the cardigan over time. It has lost some of the dye, but I've done the same fix on at least 3 of my other sweaters, even when I've had similar dye differences like this, where, you know, the unwashed yarn is lighter than the multiple washed and worn yarn in the sweater. Over time, and honestly not even in that much time, the colors really even out, so it becomes even more invisible. Obviously you can see the patch here, like but it will kind of, you know, even out with the rest of the color. And also, more importantly, I'm going to get to continue to wear the cardigan. So even though you do see the patch, it's a nice even square patch, and it's an elbow patch, so it kind of, you know, looks, some sweaters have elbow patches as a design element, so it doesn't look super out of place. So I will get to continue wearing the cardigan and continue to enjoy it with these patches. And of course, I'm going to still keep the yarn in case I need to repatch it or anything like that. I will still have more yarn here that I can continue to mend this cardigan, because I absolutely love to wear it. It is one of my favorites. So I want to make sure I'm continuing to take care of this and extending its life. The next 2 fixes that I have are really similar. They were just small holes from probably like a cat claw snagging it, because there was just one tiny hole in one spot on the sweater. So this one is my knot front tee. I knit this, I don't know, several years ago, in 2019 maybe, somewhere in there. And it had just sprung a hole a little bit above the knot detail. You can see it right here. So I just went in with a little bit of duplicate stitching and filled in the hole and kind of a little bit past it, but on, you know, past it this way, past it that way, and above and below the hole, just to make sure that it would be nice and secure. I did not have any more of this yarn remaining, or at least I could not find it in my scraps. So I used a slightly different yarn, but like from far away, it's right here. You can't really see it. Like you can see it a little bit, but I also haven't blocked this yet after doing the mend, so it should even out a little bit more. So I'm pleased again that, you know, I'm not gonna have this, not giant hole, but it's a hole on my belly on like a first layer item that I'm not wearing anything underneath. So you definitely be able to see it. So I'm glad that I'm gonna be able to wear this again. This is like the time of year that I wear this piece, where it has 3/4 sleeves, so it's a perfect thing to like throw on over a sleeveless dress, really extend the wearing season earlier of the sleeveless dress. So this is the time that I want to be wearing it. So I'm really glad to have finally done this fix, since I had noticed it, I think sometime last fall, and it just kind of sat all winter. And now I can wear it again. And then last up, I have my Tremont cardigan. I totally should have put this on a hanger, but it's just a nice open front cardigan that's fingering weight, has a cute little cable detail along the front here. And I did a really similar mend on the sleeve. Let me see if I can find it here. Yep, I did a really similar mend on the sleeve where there was just a little small hole, again, probably from like a cat snag or, you know, just snagging on something. And I just did a little duplicate stitch over the hole to fix it and not have it grow any further and all of that. The other thing that I also did was depill this. So you can probably see that, oh yes, you can absolutely see that. You can see that this yarn has quite a lot of pills, and this is like after being depilled. I did wear it after I depilled it, but let's see the inside. I think you can kind of see how pilly that fabric is. So this is like one of the softest yarns I have ever used. It is an absolute delight to wear. This is the fiber company Canopy Fingering, and as I said, delight to wear, absolutely wonderful, so soft, pills like none other though. And for that reason alone, I don't know if I would knit with it again. I don't know if I would recommend knitting with it. As I said, it's like, it is beautiful, like the stitch definition is really lovely. The wearing experience is so lovely. Like it is so soft, but it just like, it pills a lot. So I have to depill this thing basically after every single wear. And I know with that kind of like amount of depilling over time, I'm just going to wear those fibers down and they're just going to be like no sweater left to depill. It's just going to be like threads. That being said, it's not going to stop me from wearing it because it is so soft. I love to wear it. It's great. Yeah, I just have to depill it a lot and that's kind of annoying, but you know, sometimes it is what it is. So I did notice on this most recent wear though that the elbows are wearing thin on this one, just like every other cardigan that I have and have worn a lot. The elbows are wearing thin. So I'm probably also going to have to do an elbow patch fix on this one too, relatively imminently, knowing just that it pills a lot. So the fibers are kind of coming off through pilling. So that elbow is probably going to wear down even faster. And maybe it would be nice, instead of doing like the pick up and knit elbow patch on top, maybe I can kind of get ahead of things by doing a duplicate stitch elbow patch instead. So we're going to try that to continue to extend the life of this piece and see where that gets us, because as I said, really lovely to wear. It is so soft, so comfortable. I love the drape of it. It's great. It just does pill a whole lot. And before signing off for today, I wanted to share a few non-yarn but knitting related acquisitions that I've gotten over the past few weeks. So the first are some buttons from Hollinghoof Farm. I got these beautiful ceramic buttons with a quilt motif on them. The first time I saw Hollinghoof Farm was a couple of years ago at a wool gathering in Yellow Springs, Ohio. They're a local Ohio company and they were vending at that show and I found their stuff. I had gotten a couple of things from them at that show and so I followed them on Instagram, and recently they've been doing these really cute quilt block things. So their most recent release, I had to get a set of these, and they also make really lovely wood buttons as well. So I got these wood buttons to use for future cardigans. And then continuing on the button trend, I also got these really lovely kind of turquoise buttons from Hannah Thiessen Howard of Slow Knitting fame, and just a little set of these buttons, again, for a cardigan that I will knit at some point in the future. And she also has a line of craft supplies. These are just really cute snips that have a short blade, so they're travel friendly and all of that, and are super sharp. So these are just like really nice to work with to snip off yarn ends and all of that. So I always end up leaving my scissors in a variety of places, or, you know, just in project bags and stuff like that. So I'm like always trying to find where my scissors are. So I got another set to help buffer up my scissor amounts. so that hopefully whenever I'm looking for scissors, I have at least one pair that I can locate easily. The last thing that I got, I will actually insert photos of, but it is I guess it's technically not knitting related, but it's fibercraft related. I got a large gripper strip frame for punch needle with a nice stand on it. So I've kind of been wanting to do some like home good fiber craft things, either weaving or punch needle. I've done a little bit of punch needle in the past, and by a little bit of punch needle, I've done like 2 punch needle projects, but I love the way that punch needle looks, and I have tons of yarn. As I mentioned at the start of this episode, I kind of want to do some yarn stash reorganization. So with that yarn stash organization project, I also want to identify some of my current stash that I could use for these punch needle ideas that I have. And for those, I mostly just want to create, as I said, like pillows. Pillows has been like my primary idea of like, I could maybe make seasonal themed pillows because I don't really have a ton of seasonal decor. Like I have like a wreath that I put on the front of my house for a couple. I have like a spring summer one, a fall one, winter Christmas one, and I have like Christmas decor, but I don't really have like other seasonal decor, and I thought it would be kind of fun to have handmade things by me that I could like display in my home throughout the year and use the supplies that I already have to make beautiful things that make me happy. So that's kind of the idea that I have there. I'm excited to try it out. I haven't done a large scale punch needle project before. The biggest I've done is like a little framed wall hanging size, about yay big. So this is definitely like a bigger scale, but I'm excited to just kind of play creatively and see what happens and use up some of my stash in the meantime in a way that gets seen and loved and used up. A lot of my stash is like not sweater quantities of yarn, so I feel like punch needle would be a really great way to use those smaller quantities that I have of like DK, worsted, etc. So we're gonna play, we're gonna have fun, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time today to chat about knitting. You can always find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Carrie Knits, and I will see you next time.